Hi, my name is Alejandra, and as a student of HUM 115 World Mythology, I discovered the creation story of the moon and the morning star. This story comes from the Wichita people of southern Oklahoma and eastern Texas. This version is told by George Dorsey. The moon and the morning star. In the beginning there were neither sun nor stars, nor anything else that we know today. For a long time the only man was man never known on earth. He created everything. When he created the world, he created land and water, but they were not separate, and still everything was dark. The man never known on earth created a man who was known as man with the power to carry light, and a woman named Bright Shining Woman. Everything that they needed, they dreamed of, and it was there when they awoke. Bright Shining Woman received an ear of corn and knew that it would be the food for generations to come. Still there was nothing but darkness. Without knowing why, man with the power to carry light began a journey to the east. Moving slowly through the darkness, he came to a stranger who told him that there would be many villages and many people in the future, and that it would be up to men with the power to carry light to teach them. As they talked, a voice from the east called to this stranger to shoot a black and white deer that would follow a white deer and a black deer out of the stream nearby. 4 times the stranger had to tell the impatient voice that he was preparing a bow and an arrow to shoot the deer. Finally he emerged from his lodge as the deer jumped out of the water, and he shot the black and white deer. This meant that the earth would turn, that the stars would move, and that there would be day and night. The stranger, whose name was Star That Is Always Moving, went to follow the deer that he had wounded, but men with the power to carry light stayed by the shore. From where the voice had spoken, he now saw the sun rise for the first time. He returned to his home, but he traveled much faster now that it was light. That night he saw 3 stars in the sky, with another star nearby, and he concluded that they were 3 deer and the men who followed them. After there was light, villages and people multiplied, as the stranger had predicted. Men with the power to carry light and the bright shining woman went from village to village, teaching the people. Men with the power to carry light taught the men about bows and arrows. He taught them to play the ball game and the shiny game. Bright Shining Woman taught the woman about corn, how to grow corn, how to feed the people with corn, how to offer some corn at each meal to men never known on earth, how to take 4 kernels and rub them on their child as a prayer. She also taught them the double ball game. She told them that after she was gone, they could look at her face to tell when their monthly bleeding would occur, and by counting her appearances, they could keep track of when their children would be born. Then she left them, and that night the first moon came up, because she was the moon. Men with the power to carry light taught the men that they must offer some of the game that they caught to the moon and the stars, and to the other supernatural beings. He told them that he would leave them, but that they would see him sometimes in the morning. When they saw him, they were to take their children to drink and bathe in the river, which would give them long life. Then he left them and became the morning star.
This story is brought to you by Anu Breed, a YouTuber. It's Turtle Island Creation Story, American Indian Folklore. There was an island floating in the sky in which people lived. They were quiet, happy. No one was born, no one died. In the center of the island, in the center of the island, there was a tree that gave light since the sun had not yet been created. One day, a sky woman realized that she was pregnant. Then she told her husband, which flew into a rage. He tore up the tree, creating a hole in the island. The curious woman peered into the hole, looking at the waters that covered the earth. However, as she looked over, the husband pushed her, making her fall. Animals had already existed in the waters of the earth. 2 birds saw the sky woman falling, and just before she reached the waters, they rescued her. Carrying her on their backs, they brought her with the other animals. It was said that any animal could swim deep beneath the water, collect the soil. It would be used to recreate the world. One after another, the animals tried, but did not succeed. Finally, a little toad tried. When he reappeared on the surface, his mouth was full of mud. The other animals took it and spread it on the back of the big turtle. It began to grow and grow until it became the size of what we know as now North America. The sky woman then stepped onto the land, sprinkled dust into the sky, creating the stars, the moon, and the sun. After that, she gave birth to twins.
Blackfoot creation story, a Blackfoot legend. Old man came from the south, making the mountains, the prairies, and the forest as he passed along, making the birds and the animals also. He traveled northward, making things as he went, putting red paint in the ground here and there, arranging the world as we see it today. He made the Milk River and crossed it. Being tired, he went up on a little hill and lay down to rest. As he lay on his back, stretched out on the grass, with his arms extended, he marked his figure with stones. You can see those rocks today. They show the shape of his body, legs, arms, and hair. Going on north, after he had rested, he stumbled over a knoll and fell down on his knees. He said aloud, "You're a bad thing to make me stumble so." Then he raised up 2 large butts there and named them the Knees. They are called the Knees to this day. He went on farther north, and with some of the rocks he carried with him, he built the Sweetgrass Hills. Old man covered the plains with grass for the animals to feed on. He marked off a piece of ground, and it made it all kinds of roots and berries to grow. Camas, carrots, turnips, bitterroot, sarvice berries, bullberries, cherries, plums, and rosebuds. He planted trees, and he put all kinds of animals on the ground. When he created the bighorn sheep with its big head and horns, he made it out on the prairie. But it did not travel easily on the prairie. It was awkward and could not go fast. So Old Man took it by its horns, led it up into the mountains, and turned it loose. There the bighorn skipped among the rocks and went up fearless places with ease. So Old Man said to it, "This is the kind of place that suits you. This is what you are fitted for, the rocks and the mountains." While he was in the mountains, he made the antelope out of dirt and turned it loose to see how it would do. It ran so fast that it fell over some rocks and hurt itself. Seeing that the mountains were not the place for it, Old Man took the antelope down to the prairie and turned it loose. When he saw it running away fast and gracefully, he said, "This is what you are suited to, the broad prairie." One day, Old Man decided that he would make a woman and a child, so he formed them both of clay, the woman and the child, her son. After he had molded the clay in human shape, he said to it, "You must be people." And then he covered it up and went away. The next morning, he went to the place, took off the covering, looked at the images, and said, "Arise and walk." And they did so. They walked down to the river with their maker, and then he told them that his name was Napi, Old Man. This is how we came to be people. It is he who made us. The first people were poor and naked, and they did not know how to do anything for themselves. Old Man showed them the roots and berries and said, "You can eat these." And he pointed to certain trees. "When the bark of these trees is young and tender, it is good. Then you can peel it off and eat it." He told the people that the animals also should be their food. "These are your herds," he said. "All these little animals that live on the ground, squirrels, rabbits, skunks, beavers, are good to eat. You need not to fear to eat their flesh. All birds that fly, these too I have made for you, so that you can eat of their flesh." Old Man took the first people over the prairies and through the forests, then the swamps, to show them the different plants he had created. He told them what herbs were good for sickness, saying often, "The roots of this herb or the leaves of this herb, if gathered in a certain month of the year, is good for certain sicknesses." Then he showed them how to make weapons with which to kill the animals for their food. First he went out and cut some sarviceberry shoots, brought them in, and peeled the bark off them. He took one of the larger shoots, flattened it, tied a string to it, and thus made a bow. Then he caught one of the birds he had made, took feathers from its wings, split them, and tied them to a shaft of wood. At first he tied 4 feathers along the shaft, and with his bow sent the arrow toward its mark, but he found that it did not fly well. When he used only 3 feathers, it went straight to the mark. Then he went out and began to break sharp pieces of stones. When he tied them to the ends of his arrows, he found that black flint stones and some white flint stones made the best arrow points. When the people had learned to make bow and arrows, Old Man taught them how to shoot animals and birds, because it is not healthful to eat animals' flesh raw. He showed the first people how to make fire. He gathered soft, dry, rotten driftwood and made a punk of it. Then he found a piece of hardwood and drilled a hole in it with an arrow point. He gave the first man a pointed piece of hardwood and showed them how to roll it between his hands until sparks came out and the punk caught fire. Then he showed the people how to cook the meat of the animals they had killed and how to eat it. He told them to get a certain kind of stone that was on the land, while he found a harder stone. With the hard stone he had them hollow out the softer one, and so make a kettle. Thus they made their dishes. Old Man told the first people how to get spirit power. Go away by yourself and go to sleep. Something will come to you in your dreams that will help you. It may be some animal. Whatever this animal tells you in your sleep, you must do. Obey it. Be guided by it. If later you want help, if you are traveling alone and cry aloud for help, your prayer will be answered. It may be by an eagle, perhaps a buffalo, perhaps a bear. Whatever animal hears your prayer, you must listen to it. After this, that was how the first people got along in the world, by the power given to them in their dreams. After this, Old Man kept on traveling north. Many of the animals that he had created followed him. They understood when he spoke to them, and they were his servants. When he got to the north point of the Porcupine Mountains, he made some more mud images of people. He blew his breath upon them, and they became people, men and women. They asked him, "What are we to eat?" By way of answer, old man made many images of clay in the form of buffalo. Then he blew breath upon them, and they stood up. When he made the signs to them, they started to run. He said to the people, "Those animals, buffalo, are your food. But how can we kill them?" The people asked. "I will show you how," he answered. He took them to a cliff and told them to build rock piles. "Now, hide behind these rock piles," he said. "I will lead the buffalo this way. When they are opposite of you, rise up." After telling them what to do, he started toward the herd of buffalo. When he called the animals, they started to run toward him, and they followed him until they were inside the piles of rock. The old man dropped back. As the people rose up, the buffalo ran in a straight line and jumped off the cliff. "Go down and take the flesh of those animals," said Old Man. The people tried to tear the limbs apart, but they could not. Old Man went to the edge of the cliff, broke off some pieces with sharp edges, and told the people to cut the flesh with these rocks. They obeyed him. When they had skinned the buffalo, they set upon some poles and put the hides on them. Thus they made a shelter to sleep under. After Old Man taught the people all the things, he started off again, traveling north until he came to where the Bow and Elbow rivers meet. There he made some more people and taught them the same things. From there he went farther north. When he had gone almost to the Red Deer River, he was so tired that he lay down on a hill. The form of his body can be seen there yet on top of the hill where he rested. When he awoke from his sleep, he traveled far north until he came to a high hill. He climbed to the top of it, and there he sat down to rest. As he gazed over the country, he was greatly pleased by it, looking at the steep hill down below him. He said to himself, "This is a fine place for sliding. I will have some fun." And he began to slide down the hill. The marks where he slid are to be seen yet, and the place is known to all the Blackfeet tribes as Old Man's Sliding Ground. Old Man can never die. Long ago he left the Blackfeet and went away toward the west, disappearing in the mountains before he started. He said to the people, "I will always take care of you, and someday I will return." Even today, some people think that he spoke the truth and that when he comes back, he will bring with him the buffalo, which they believe the white men have hidden. Others remember that before he left them, he said that when he returned, he would find them a different people. They would be living in a different world, he said, from that which he had created for them and taught them to live in.